Welcome back to Power Lunch. Tonight is Tesla's highly anticipated Robotaxi event, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, something Elon Musk and others have pointed to as key for the company's future. Let's bring in Phil LeBeau for more on what exactly to expect. Hi, Phil.
Kelly, there's two things that people should be focused on tonight. First of all, let's talk about the Robotaxi unveil and the discussion about the Tesla Robotaxi network, rideshare network. Maybe they have a different name for it, but at the event tonight, Robotaxi will get most of the attention. Three things that analysts are looking for, and this tells us whether or not this is Elon really giving us something or Elon putting on a show. Specific operational details, something like cost per mile. This is our estimate. This is how we're going to build the vehicle, what stands out about it, the timeline for a rollout. Is it going to be specifically tied to, I don't know, the first half of 2026? Early 2027, there's got to be some timeline there for people to say, okay, now we can start to game this out. And the types of autonomous models, we've been told there's going to be a two-seat model that they will put a demonstration on with. We've also heard that there may be more of a community ride model, if you will. Those are that's the guts of what people really want to see in terms of the Robotaxi. Keep in mind, the other part of the story that Wall Street's probably more focused on is if Elon Musk makes reference to a lower-priced model that will be coming perhaps in the first or second quarter of next year. Remember, in the first quarter, they said, hey, we're going to start work on a lower-priced version, maybe a decontented or a stripped-down version of the Model 3. What do they tell us about that this evening? If they tell us something, that could have real implications for Tesla shares tomorrow. Remember, the company delivered 1.81 million vehicles last year. As you look at their annual delivery growth, it's been growing steadily from the beginning. I don't think they've had a down year, if I'm not mistaken. Well, that may change this year because right now the estimate is for 1.78 million vehicles to be delivered. And by the way, to get to that point, they're at 1.29 million deliveries through the third quarter. They're going to have a record number of deliveries in the fourth quarter. Can that happen? Sure, it could happen. But that is really what people are going to be focused on tonight, guys. I know people get caught up in these events. They focus on the Elon Musk show, but it's really the details about Robotaxi as well as the lower price model. That's what Wall Street's going to be looking at.
All right, Phil, hang on for just a minute as we switch our conversation to talk a little bit more about Elon Musk injecting himself further into the 2024 election cycle. He has, as you probably know, been stumping for former President Trump, and aggressively so. So is it alienating Democrats who might buy cars from Tesla? Let's explore that with Steve Kovach with that piece of the Musk puzzle. What do you say, Steve? Is it showing up in sales? I mean, Phil just said that sales aren't as high as they were. Could politics have something to do with that?
Yeah, it's hard to really make a strong correlation there. But look, Tyler, ahead of that big Robotaxi event tonight, Musk has been spending the first part of his week campaigning for Trump for president. On Saturday, of course, he was at that Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. That was his first formal appearance with Trump on the campaign trail. And according to NBC News, Musk also called Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro while he was at the Steelers game in Pittsburgh on Sunday. Now, Shapiro told NBC News the call was about Musk investing in the state, not about politics, but it is notable Musk initiated that conversation with the governor of perhaps the most important swing state in this election. He also gave an interview with Tucker Carlson on X. You can kind of guess how that one went. And he's been offering $47 payments to people registering to vote. All of this ahead of that Robotaxi event, something Musk and Tesla need the public to believe in to justify its massive valuation. And the Wall Street Journal had a story on this earlier this year. Musk's political behavior and recent statements have kind of created a negative sentiment around him at a time when Tesla is struggling to grow its vehicle deliveries, just like Phil mentioned. And an NBC poll from last month, only 6% of Democrats had a favorable view of Musk. 79% of them had negative feelings. But as you can imagine, guys, nearly the opposite with Republicans. 62% have positive feeling about Musk, guys.
Phil, let me turn back to you. You mentioned earlier that they're on pace now to deliver something like 1.7, I forget what you said, 1.79 million cars this year. 1.78 million cars this year. Is there any thought in your mind or in the numbers that slowing of the growth rate is attributable at all to Musk and his political positions?
I don't buy it at all, Tyler. I think that there's no correlation between a slower growth rate for Tesla. Actually, sales would be declining slightly this year. And his political leanings, work, whatever you want to call it. Look, I have plenty of friends who are very, very liberal, very democratic, and they are still Tesla fans. And it's because Tesla dominates the electric vehicle market. While people may not like some of what he does with Donald Trump, I have as many friends who are Democrats as who are hardcore MAGA Trump supporters who believe in Tesla because it is the best electric vehicle out there in terms of sales and in terms of they set the table for everybody else. I never have somebody come up to me and say, I'm thinking about buying an electric vehicle. Should I trust Tesla? I do have that question about other brands. And that still says something regardless of his political leaning.